Well, my name is Daniel, and I'm a co-founder at Aquaponics AI. And this is a series called Peoples of Aquaponics. And we're just connecting with industry experts in aquaculture and aquaponics. And today we have Stephen Hedlund, and he's with the Global Aquaculture Alliance. And he's a veteran in the seafood industry with 20 years of experience and deep understanding of seafood value chain and sustainable seafood programs. And today we're just going to connect with him and hear about the Global Aquaculture Alliance and what they do. And thanks, Stephen, for joining today.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. My pleasure.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more just about you at first. Just your experience in aquaculture and seafood industry.
Yeah, I'm actually a journalist by trade, and I fell into the industry about 21 years ago, working for a B2B media and events company here in Portland, Maine, where I live. And seafood was one of the company's industries. So that's how I learned about the industry, through being an editor for the company's magazine. So and then about 8.5 years ago, I joined the Global Aquaculture Alliance as its first communications-minded professional to help it with its communications, events, and marketing strategy. So I've done a little bit of everything in my 8.5 years there. So
great, that's fantastic. Yeah, tell us more about the Global Aquaculture Alliance. I know their tagline is feeding the world through responsible aquaculture. Can you tell us more about that vision and what you guys do?
Of course. GAA has been around since 1997. Founded by our president, who's still with us, George Chamberlain, and really the GAA has its roots in shrimp farming. A lot of the folks who founded GAA were pioneers in commercial shrimp farming back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And at the time, shrimp farming in Southeast Asia was being bashed by the environmental community over mangrove deforestation. So George realized that there wasn't really a voice for responsible aquaculture out there, and that's kind of where the organization came from. And it started out as, we're an international trade association. We're a 501c6, and it's just really started out with your typical association activities, magazine, event, which are the two main things that I work on currently. And then it evolved into the Best Aquaculture Practices third-party certification program.
Yes.
Because we had these pre-competitive activities where we could talk about shared responsibilities in aquaculture. But there really wasn't, it's the demonstration of that. And that's where the BAP standards were developed, so that processing plants, farms, hatcheries, and feed mills could be audited against these standards annually to prove that they're applying best practices in environmental responsibility, social responsibility, food safety, and animal health and welfare. So the organization has evolved over the past 20 plus years, where we have the world's largest and most comprehensive aquaculture certification program, but we're still involved in all these pre-competitive activities. And that's kind of what sets us apart. Some things need to be addressed, as a whole, as a community. You're not going to find solutions. Any one company is not going to find solutions. So we still take that approach.
Okay. And you have the certification, and you also have just general membership as well, that people can
exactly.
be a part. Yeah,
exactly.
Do you know how many people have gone through the certification?
Yeah, currently there are more than 2,400 BAP certified facilities in almost 40 countries, encompassing about 30 farm seafood species.
Wow. Okay. I know
So,
Superior Fresh is
hmm
a
hmm
massive aquaponic company, and
hmm
they're certified, I believe, like in about 2018. Do you know
yeah,
of
and I
any
think the
other
first one
aquaponic
too.
farmers? Yeah, okay.
But
The first
yeah,
one ever.
yeah, the first one ever in our program. So that was,
Great.
I remember sharing the news. So, to my knowledge, I don't know if there may be one other, but um, I would say with our certification program, it has become a requirement of retail and food service companies. So they'll require that their customers pursue BAP certification. So for some of the small to mid-sized aquaponics operations, that may not necessarily be a requirement to the people that they're selling to in terms of fish. So we've you kind of got to be to a certain scale, big like
Yes.
Superior Fresh,
Yeah.
where okay, they've got some big customers and they expect this sort of thing. They've written our program and other programs into their sustainable seafood sourcing policy. So it's almost becomes like a requirement way
Yeah.
of doing business. So
I mean, I would
and
only see that growing. I just think, yeah, with the certification that you have, and just with uh, even aquaculture and decoupled
mhm.
aquaponics or coupled aquaponics, I could see it only growing and people needing to have that certification.
Yeah, exactly. If you're going to sell at any, if you're going to sell at any major buyer, it's an expectation. Yeah.
Right. How how is the seafood industry becoming more sustainable?
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
Very good
Yeah.
question.
I just know it's a
Ooh,
it's a topic, and
mhm.
aquaculture is as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but the largest growing segment of agriculture.
Yeah, it
And
has been. It has been for a
yeah,
while.
and
Yeah.
so just in your time with the alliance, how have you seen it become more sustainable?
Yeah. More better technology, uh, resulting in more efficient production. That's really what it's all about. You're seeing more and more large scale or industrial scale farms and processing plants that are able to operate much more efficiently because of scale.
Yeah.
So that's and also because of the growth that you just mentioned, we're seeing more investment from outside what I call the seafood bubble, where investors are coming in and spending a lot of money on new aquaculture production systems, such as recirculating aquaculture systems, or better feed ingredients to supplement fish meal and fish feed. We're really seeing it in every sector up and down the seafood supply chain where the investment's coming in, and it could be someone who's new to the industry, or it could be a big player in the industry who's reinvesting in their operations. So that's been the difference in the past 10 years or so.
Yeah. What are some technologies you're excited about that you're hearing of, and that are, like you said, streamlining efficiency and production? And
Right, right. Yeah, it is very exciting. I mean, we at our event, which is called Goal, we held it virtually
okay,
uh, in October last year. And one of the 10 sessions was titled Paradigm Shifting Aquaculture Production Systems and the Pioneers Behind Them.
great.
And I thought, we were actually just talking about that yesterday. I thought that was really interesting because the production systems that we highlighted, and the session was chaired by our president and founder, George Chamberlain, really dug into how much investment was being put into new aquaculture production systems. We had two that involved shrimp, and both from very large players in the industry, Min Fu in Vietnam and CP Foods in Thailand. And they talked about these new land-based tank systems. Traditionally shrimp is grown in a man-made pond where water is diverted through the pond and back out again, and often run by families. And these new shrimp production systems were very appealing because of the scale and the efficiency. And then the other three of the five, the other three were on salmon.
Okay.
And it's just so much is being thrown at not only recirculating aquaculture systems, land-based systems that can be placed closer to market, so that product isn't required to be shipped around the world. I think there are something like 60 something of these RAS Atlantic salmon farms currently in operation or in development around the world. It's very
Okay.
encouraging.
Yeah.
And then there's offshore too. We're seeing systems offshore, especially in Norway, which is the world's largest Atlantic salmon producer, really investing in offshore technology, enclosed systems. It's almost like a ship that's out to sea with an enclosed system versus a cage that's tied to the ocean floor. It's amazing, what we're on the cusp of
Yeah.
seeing. And that's just from the two major species in the industry, which is shrimp and salmon. So,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
And you had mentioned just fish nutrition being
Mhm.
just an innovation that's happening recently. How is that just fueling the aquacultural future?
Yeah, well, we're seeing what were called alternative feed ingredients become mainstream.
Okay.
And again, to supplement fish meal. Now, fish meal fisheries worldwide are as responsibly managed as they've ever been. There are a lot of certified responsibly managed fisheries out there. But like any wild fishery resource, there's a ceiling. So and fish meal will continue to be a major ingredient in fish feed, but the industry is looking for new ways to supplement that. And we're seeing a lot of investment, particularly in that, using insect meal, or there's a variety of different types of alternative feed ingredients, the protein base that you're seeing in feed to supplement fish meal. So, and that's all meant eventually to drive the cost. A fish feed can be 50% of a farmer's costs.
Right.
So driving that down has an enormous impact. The cost down has an enormous impact on production.
Yeah. I think we have a lot of followers that are aquaponic practitioners, and then some are aquaculture practitioners as well. But I believe, just from my experience, most aquaponic practitioners step into aquaponics obviously valuing and believing in the fish side, but kind of focusing on plant production. In just your advice, how could an aquaponic grower just be a better aquaculture practitioner? What are some tips you'd recommend that we could upgrade our fish knowledge and growth practice?
Yeah, I think the challenge is on the market side, honestly, and perhaps I'm looking at it from a U.S. perspective, but the challenge is on the market side. You need to, and I know tilapia is a common farm seafood species raised in an aquaponics operation. You need to raise a fish that you'll be able to sell to a certain market. Like tilapia is an example. Because the cost of producing tilapia in Latin America and Asia is so much lower. The only market you really have for, if you're a U.S. aquaponics operations, or in other countries too, is to sell whole fish to certain types of markets. So it's very popular in Asian markets here in the United States. So because you're required to get a certain price point to make it worth your while. And I feel like that's where the challenge lies, that you really need to look at the market for that fish before you think about the fish end of the aquaponics operation being as profitable as the, you know, I know a lot of just kind of do it for the sake of doing it, and that might be the answer for you. That's the market side. That's a difficult sell. The people who, you know, it's limited. I think that's a major challenge. So you're
good.
always subject to, you know, no matter what you do, you're subject to the ups and downs of the market for that particular species.
Yeah.
It's still the same species. You might be producing a higher quality product in whole fresh fish, but you're still subject to what, you know, a fresh fish fillet from Honduras or Colombia or Ecuador is being sold for. You know, if you're it's just and that's the case with every species. So
How do you think aquaponic growers can just be more responsible on the aquaculture side?
yeah, I think you know, there's just I feel like a lot, you know, and this is just my my gut, but
Sure.
that a lot of aquaponics, they're coming into the industry for the right reasons, and I feel like they're coming in. They're already well aware of what, you know, what's responsible and what's not responsible. There, that seems to be, you know, they all seem to be getting in the business for the right reasons, which is really encouraging, I think. But that doesn't mean, you know, you can, you know, there's always means to educate yourself, you know, and to look at standards like our BAP standards as a guide, even if you're not planning on pursuing certification, even looking at standards like ours as a guide to how to follow best practices. So,
is there a BAP standard you're most passionate about?
No, me in particular.
Yeah.
No,
I didn't know if
really.
there's one that stands
Yeah.
out that you're like, hey, I really am excited about that one.
Yeah, I mean, for us, what excites me, or what excites us, is that, you know, this isn't just about the farm. I think there's always a focus on the farm, but that's just part of it, really. And that we have a seafood processing plant standard, feed mill standard, and a hatchery standard. I think you know, it just shows that for aquaculture, the entire aquaculture production chain can be certified under our program. So, you know, for example, if you may be doing all the right things at the farm level, but if there are best practices not being followed at the processing level, then really how quote unquote sustainable is your fish? So it's we've always felt, and that's why our program is so comprehensive, that it's important to check off every level of aquaculture production chain that you can apply for certification for each level. And we're actually getting into wild fisheries too. We have two sets of standards: our seafood processing plant standard and a new responsible fishing vessel standard for social responsibility, where we're just trying to apply our program to gaps in wild fisheries production or aquaculture production where certification doesn't currently exist. So, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier about actually being able to demonstrate it. And if you're able to demonstrate it every year and then show progress over time, and then our standards are continually updated and strengthened. So, you know, when you're talking about sustainability, you know, that's the demonstration that you can look back at all the data involved in an audit and audits over the years and see progress over time. So that's what we really feel. This on the ground proof is really what you know, the proof of sustainability. So
yeah, setting those standards and the audit trail and with the data. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
What do you feel the role of a smallholder fish farmer globally is just in the aquaculture economy? I just know, you know, a lot of work is in developing countries or, you know, other areas that are just smallholder fish farmers. How can they play a role in the just aquaculture economy?
Yeah, very good question. There, I talk about certification, but that's probably the top, 15-20% of the market is in a position financially, and depending on if their product's being sold internationally to pursue certification. But what about the other 80% or 85%? So for smallholders to engage in aquaculture improvement projects or fishery improvement projects, and for NGOs like ours to meet them where they're at and try to help them take the next steps is really important too. Because we can all focus on the cream of the crop,
Yeah.
but that doesn't really move the dial if smallholders aren't engaging with NGOs and industry and the retail and food service community too, and vice versa. Some retail and food service companies, how I said they have certification written into their sustainable seafood sourcing policy. They may also have fishery improvement projects or aquaculture improvement projects that they working with certain NGOs, and then they recognize that progress, and then they'll start buying from that smallholder, even though they're not ready for certification yet. So I think that's really important too. And this is a two-way street too. This isn't just about NGOs coming in and forcing their way on smallholder farmers. This works both ways. So we really do think that's important, because you got to look at production as almost like a bell curve, where the vast majority of farmers are producing the vast majority of product, and you have to address the front of the bell curve as well as the back of the bell curve.
Yeah.
So because a few bad players can bring down the reputation of the industry. And a lot of people consumers still don't understand what aquaculture is. And they may be a lot of misperceptions around aquaculture production practices. So, it's important that, that we lift up the industry in its entirety, because it only takes one bad story to bring,
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Right.
to bring down the reputation of any industry. So,
Right. Yeah. Along those lines of a smallholder farmer,
mhm.
there's a lot of followers that are just involved in education with youth. And how do you feel like education just plays a role in our sustainable future of aquaculture?
For a small local aquaponics facility, it might be a child's first introduction to food production. That's what's so brilliant about it. For some of these, and for your large scale aquaculture operations, they're not quite as accessible. Maybe a salmon farm that's a mile offshore, or a series of shrimp farms in Vietnam or Thailand. So, locally as a student, you might not have access to that sort of thing. So that a local aquaponics facility can engage with students and give them a sense of what it takes to grow food, I think is of such value, and something that's harder for larger players in the industry to deliver, because that may pique their interest in. We're certainly seeing a lot of young people getting involved in aquaculture, and interest in food production seems to continue to rise and rise and rise year over year, and those first steps may come through exposure to an aquaponics facility. So I don't see that but anything but a good thing.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to stay in aquaponics. You could stay in aquaponics. You could go on to do something. And there's so many different types of jobs in aquaculture. So you don't have to just be a farmer or a processor. You could be a communications person like me. You could be a marketer. You could be an event organizer. There's certainly a lot of opportunities out there.
Yeah. What's the future of the Global Aquaculture Alliance in your work specifically? What is on the horizon?
Yeah, so this year we're, as I mentioned earlier, we're transitioning to the Global Seafood Alliance. And that's a result of our involvement in the two sets of wild fisheries standards that I mentioned earlier. And now actually our pre-competitive association work will come around too. So at our goal conference, which I manage, which is now a series of virtual events and as well as an in-person event, we'll be talking a lot more about opportunities and challenges in wild fisheries, just as we have in aquaculture for years. Same with our magazine, same with our podcast, same with our membership. We're just going to be addressing those. We're basically doubling our world by doing that, and that's really exciting because we've just been so focused on aquaculture the past 20 plus years, and now we're slowly getting into wild fisheries and building up our expertise there so we can better serve that community.
Yeah,
That's exciting. That's really exciting.
that
It's
is
happening a
exciting.
lot
Yeah.
faster than I thought it would, but
Yeah. Seems like a lot of stuff has just been kind of
yeah,
jump
yeah,
started. Yeah.
yeah. We're unique in that it's a lot of aquaculture and fisheries organizations are regional or national, and what we're trying to do is be a global voice on both sides. So and there's nothing quite like that out there, and we're very focused on professionals within the industry. So we're well connected to the people in retail and food service, just as we are to the people in production. We always see ourselves as a convener of sorts,
Yeah.
bringing people together who may not otherwise connect to address challenges and opportunities in aquaculture and now in wild fisheries. So
Yeah.
it's exciting.
And you mentioned a podcast and a magazine. How can
hmm
people learn more about just your work and how can they follow along?
Yeah, oftentimes that's how a person finds out about us. Our magazine is open to all, as well as our podcast, and those activities are meant to not only to educate the industry about whatever it may be, and animal disease, and how it's being managed, or trends in consumer purchasing habits. It could be anything, and that might be their first introduction to our world. And then our hope is that they become more and more involved over time as a member or an event attendee, or maybe even pursuing BAP certification. So I always feel that those activities are important because this isn't some sort of exclusive club.
Yeah.
We want we want certain things that we do to be open to all, and get people in the door that way. We feel that's important, and and that's those activities become their introduction to us, and vice versa. So and we hope to keep that relationship going over time.
Is there a public list of the BAP standards? Is there
Yeah,
where can someone find that?
yeah, on our BAP website,
Okay.
bapcertification.org. Our program is pretty transparent, and the standards to which we're accredited to require as much. All of our standards are publicly available as PDFs on our website. All of our BAP certified facilities are listed in a chart, sort and search chart on our website. So it's just all those things are readily available, and there's a public comment period for the standards. We have a standards oversight committee of people who are not GAA employees, who are continually updating and strengthening the standards. The people who actually do the auditing are independent from us. They're not GAA employees. They work for certification bodies who do the actual auditing and then report back to us. So there's a lot of independence and transparency built into this program, and as well as the other programs that are in the space. And it's an expectation. Yeah.
Yeah. On this series, we ask a lot of guests what their superpower is. And just meaning what's
Yeah.
Stephen's unique contribution to either the Alliance or to this world or to the seafood industry. What do you feel like your unique superpower
Mine
is?
personally,
Your personal unique superpower.
well, for me, my experience in B2B media events and marketing, and if I can continually educate myself on best practices in those disciplines and apply them to to the industry, then my hope is that that'll help make it a little bit of a better industry. Because my background, it's not in science or biology of aquaculture. It's in these other things. So I hope that just by doing that, and I do a lot of research and education outside of our aquaculture bubble or seafood bubble, just to I basically like to steal from others, see what other food industries and other industries in general are doing, and try to apply them to our industry. Because most people in the industry aren't thinking of those things, and that's my job and my colleagues' jobs and others, in other associations, to think of those things and apply them to our industry. And assuming that a more transparent, more open industry is a better one. We're operating under that philosophy. So
yeah, that's a unique contribution for sure. What do you do when you're not focusing on the seafood industry? What recharges you? How do you unplug? Just in life, when you're not focused on the seafood industry, what brings you life?
Yeah, well, I spend a lot of time with my family, of course, but I like to be outside.
Yeah.
When I'm not working, I unplug. So fortunate to live in a place that's fairly rural, and with a lot of outdoor activities. So I enjoy fishing, particularly ice fishing.
Okay.
Which I'm enjoying every weekend right now. And
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I have never been ice fishing, but I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah, I love it. It's so much fun. It's so much
Okay.
fun. And it's bringing people together at a time when people are stuck indoors.
Yes.
It's so nice to go out there and we just invite everyone out, and you end up meeting people out there and talking to them. And there's not a lot of that going on right now.
Right.
So I feel like this season has been special because of it. So
yeah.
But any outdoor activity, really, I hiking too, you end up meeting people who you wouldn't otherwise meet. So it's nice. It's nice.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for your time today. We love what you're doing, and we see just the importance of what you're doing at the Alliance. And so, yeah, we appreciate your work. And I think the aquacultural industry, seafood industry, aquaponic industry, we can all benefit from, seeing the inspiration that you guys are providing, and just best practices and certification and standards. I think someone told me about some of the challenges of either aquaculture or aquaponics, just scaling with responsibly and sustainably, is just that standardization of practices and certifications. And I think it's a bottleneck. And so thanks for what you're doing at the Alliance. And thanks for your time and for joining us.